Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Today we will cover the following: psychology and mental processes in dogs. To talk about mental processes, it is necessary to give an introduction to psychology. This word comes from two Greek words: psyche, shak, mind, soul, or spirit, and logos, shadra, study, or discourse. Literally, it means study of the mind or soul. The current definition of psychology is the science of human behavior and mental processes. To understand psychology, it must be broken down into its simplest components, which are the mental processes that help with the understanding of human or animal behavior. There are two types of mental processes: basic mental processes, higher mental processes, the latter being exclusive to humans, and little research has been done on them in animals. These processes are considered to be what separates us from animals. This topic will focus on basic psychological processes because they are considered to be more relevant to animals and because there is more accessible information and research on them. Basic psychological processes. Basic psychological processes can be classified as follows. Sensation. It is the ability to gather information obtained through our senses: sight, taste, smell, hearing, touch. Perception. It is the cognitive ability to interpret the gathered information obtained through our senses. Attention. It is the ability we have to focus our senses according to our interests. Memory. It deals with the impression, storage, and recall of information. Learning refers to the acquisition of information. Intelligence. Some definitions include ability to solve problems, to reason logically and identify solutions. Verbal ability. Ability to develop abstract thoughts. Ability to establish social relationships and show interest in others. Ability to understand the world, think rationally, and make effective use of available resources when faced with a challenge. Overall capacity of an individual to act purposefully, think rationally, and deal effectively with their environment. Thought, language, and communication. In the case at hand, dogs have their own communication system, where each bark has a meaning. Emotions. They constitute a charged interest with which one engages in something that is happening. It is a reaction accompanied by physiological effects, such as an increase in heart rate if it is anger, or goosebumps if it is from contact with another person, and psychological effects of interpreting a situation. 3. Sensation. Sensation from a biological standpoint could be defined as that process that detects physical energy from the environment and senses that act as filters, encode this information, and convert it into a nerve signal. Sensation is the primary brain process that comes from our main senses: sight, touch, smell, taste, and hearing. The senses are information receptors that capture stimuli and transmit them to the brain, where sensations are generated. All the information we have about the world starts with sensations. We see light, shapes, textures, contours. We hear sounds. We perceive smells and tastes. When our skin comes into contact with objects, we feel heat or cold. Sensation is known as the brain response that an organism gives to stimulation of its internal or external environment. Let's say it is a filtering mechanism. All knowledge of the external world is filtered by the senses, which send the information through sensory receptors to the nervous system. Sensation is the most basic and fundamental of psychological processes, since it is the usual procedure for organisms to detect and identify internal, from their body, and external, from the environment, stimulation, enabling them to adapt and survive in their natural environment. It is, therefore, the organism's main supplier of information and the fundamental connection with its usual surroundings. If there were no such connection because the channels were closed or because the necessary information is not received, conscious life would not be possible. The senses that may have more relevance in the canine world are 3: sight, hearing, and smell. These senses allow dogs to know and interpret stimuli coming from their environment and adapt it to their experience and reality. Two of them, sight and smell, have been of great use to humans as they are used for hunting. The following are the details of these senses and their characteristics. Vision. A dog's vision is not characterized by great visual acuity, but rather by the ability to perceive movement. They have excellent night vision or twilight vision due to the use of the tapetum lucidum, a reflective screen inside the eye. The dog's field of vision ranges from 240 to 250 degrees, much greater than that of humans, which is approximately 180 degrees. Dogs use their vision in low-light conditions. To help them see in the dark, dogs have large pupils, a higher density of rods in the optic fovea, a faster blinking speed, and a refractive tapetum lucidum. The tapetum is a refractive surface located behind the retina that reflects light to give photoreceptors a second chance to capture photons. Although these adaptations improve vision in the dark, they also reduce visual acuity in dogs. Like most mammals, dogs are dichromats and have color vision, equivalent to red-green color blindness in humans. Different breeds have their own anatomical and functional peculiarities regarding vision. Dogs with long snouts have a visual streak that extends across the width of the retina, giving them an excellent wide field of view, while dogs with short snouts have a central area, a central region with up to 3 times the density of nerve endings of the visual streak, which provides them with detailed vision more similar to humans. Some breeds, particularly greyhounds, have a field of vision of up to 270 degrees, while wide-headed breeds with short snouts have a much narrower field of vision, as low as 180 degrees, similar to humans. Some breeds also have a genetic tendency for myopia. While most breeds are emmetropic, it has been discovered that 1 out of every 2 Rottweilers is nearsighted. Smell. Dogs have a highly developed sense of smell. They have between 150 to 300 million olfactory cells, depending on the breed, compared to the 5 million we humans have. At birth, this sense helps puppies find their mother, as their sight and hearing are not yet developed. They use their sense of smell to identify each other. While the human brain is dominated by and characterized by a large visual cortex, the canine brain is predominantly dominated by an olfactory cortex. The olfactory bulb of dogs, in proportion to the total size of the brain, is about 40 times larger than that of humans. Depending on the breed, dogs have between 125 and 220 million olfactory receptors spread over an area the size of a pocket handkerchief, compared to 5 million receptors spread over the area of a stamp in humans. Bloodhounds are the exception, with approximately 300 million olfactory receptors. Dogs can detect smells at concentrations almost 100 million times lower than what humans can detect. Hearing. A dog's hearing is much more developed than that of humans. Puppies' ears start to function between 10 and 15 days of age and become the second most developed sense in dogs after smell. Dogs have very large auricular pavilions and a great ability to orient themselves to detect the source of a sound. The perception of sounds is very high, allowing them to hear very distant and weak sounds quite easily. The hearing range of dogs is approximately 40 Hz to 60,000 Hz. They can detect sounds as low as 16 to 20 Hz, compared to 2070 Hz in humans, and also above 45 kHz, compared to 1320 kHz in humans. Their ears, characterized by a high degree of mobility, allow them to determine the exact origin of a sound. 18 or more muscles can tilt, rotate, raise or lower a dog's ears. In addition, a dog can detect the origin of a sound much faster than a human and hear sounds at a distance up to 4 times greater than humans. Dogs with a more natural ear shape, like the ears of wild canids like the fox, usually hear better than dogs with more flexible ears typical of many domestic breeds. Touch and taste. Regarding touch, dogs do not have a highly developed sense of touch. The tissue of their paw pads does not allow them to gather very precise information. Dogs perceive sensations such as cold, heat, or pain through their skin. They also have sensory hairs located above their eyes, on the lower jaw, on the cheeks, and on the lips, which help them navigate in the dark. Regarding the sense of taste, not much information is available. It is known that dogs do not have a highly developed sense of taste, and what they really enjoy about food is the smell. Perception. Perception is the basic way we relate to the world. It is when we recognize a phenomenon that affects us through our senses, organize that sensory data, and give it meaning. It is important to note that perception is a process of interpreting external data captured by the senses. This means that reality will be interpreted not only based on a common structure of information processing from a global schema, but there will also be a subjective and very personal interpretation of reality. We have a common structural and functional basis that helps us interpret reality in a joint way and allows us to understand each other. However, there is always the subjectivity of the perceiver. Below are some definitions. Perception is the ability to select, organize, and interpret our sensations based on our memories and past experiences. Perception is a cognitive process by which we organize and interpret sensations and perceive sets or forms, gestalt, endowed with meaning. It is the point where cognition and reality meet. It is the most basic cognitive activity from which all others emerge. It is a sensory cognitive process. We perceive reality through our senses and understand it, giving it meaning. Thanks to perception, reality is presented as organized, structured, full of sense and meaning. Its main characteristics are as follows. It is a process that depends on the characteristics of the stimulus and the socio-cultural and affective experience of the perceiving subject. This subject uses perceptual schemes and is conditioned by their prior learning, experience, personality, and culture. A process of information adaptation to the environment. The goal of perception is to give meaning to the reality we experience, provide us with information about the world, and enable our adaptation to the environment. A selective process. Since the information we receive is excessive and the individual's resources are limited, we perceive what is relevant to us in each circumstance. This selection of stimuli, which is of great importance for our adaptation and survival, occurs through attention. It is essential to consider that a sensory process is not the same as a perceptual process. The sensory process only involves the detection and discrimination of stimulation through the sense organs. The perceptual process already requires some interpretation of one or several sensations by the organism. In any learning process, training, or understanding of reality, perception is required. The environmental assimilation and response will depend on the perceptual system. In the case of dogs, their perceptual system is formed based on their senses. Dogs perceive the world primarily through their sense of smell. Their world, their identity, are mainly organized and ordered by smell. Perception. Dogs can sense the mood changes of other dogs and humans around them based on changes in hormone levels and sweating. They can help predict epileptic seizures in affected individuals using their sense of smell. The olfactory mucosa has a surface area of about 18 cubic centimeters compared to about 3 cubic centimeters in humans. It has about 200 million olfactory receptors, and certain breeds like bloodhounds have nearly 300 million receptors, while humans have 5 million. Additionally, dogs have a strong olfactory memory. The sense of smell is 10,000 times more sensitive than taste. Sniffing involves creating air movements within the nasal cavity so that the air contacts as much surface area as possible. The amygdala is a structure in the limbic system, the region of the brain responsible for emotions, that plays a crucial role in individual recognition, sexual and maternal behavior, food selection, and aggressive behavior. Therefore, the sense of smell is important in controlling these behaviors. Pheromones are chemical substances or mixtures of substances whose exact chemical composition is unknown. These pheromones are emitted by an animal to produce specific effects in another animal of the same species. Important sources of pheromones are urine, vaginal secretion, the head area, the perianal and perineal area, anal sacs, and the interdigital spaces. We can basically count on two types of pheromones: releasing pheromones and priming pheromones. Releasing pheromones are those that produce immediate and short-term changes in the behavior of the recipient. Priming pheromones are those that cause physiological changes in the recipient, especially nervous and hormonal changes related to reproductive physiology. These types of substances and brain structures condition the way a dog perceives things, which is quite different from humans. Their perceptual system is still poorly understood, and there is not much substantial research or information currently available to answer questions such as: how do dogs perceive psychologically? Do dogs have mental schemas? If so, what are they like? How do dogs process information? Is their learning purely stimulus response? Or does their learning involve stimulus response with their will playing a role in between? Does their perception come with predetermined action patterns, or are they learned? Attention. Riatagui, 1999, states that attention is a discriminatory and complex process that accompanies all cognitive processing. It is responsible for filtering information and allocating resources to allow the internal adaptation of the organism in relation to external demands. Tudela, 1992, pp. 137-138, states that attention should be considered as a central mechanism of limited capacity whose primary function is to control and guide the organism's conscious activity according to a specific objective. The main characteristics of attention are concentration, inhibition of irrelevant information, and focusing on relevant information, with the ability to maintain it for extended periods of time. Arda, Rosselli, Pineda, and Opara, 1997. Concentration of attention manifests through its intensity and resistance to divert attention to other objects or secondary stimuli, which is associated with effort. Distribution and breadth. The ability to maintain attention on multiple objects or situations. The more closely related the objects are and the more automated or practiced they are, the easier it is to distribute attention. Intensity. The amount of attention we pay to an object or task. It is directly related to a person's level of wakefulness and alertness. Stability. The ability to maintain attention on an object or multiple objects for a long time. Control. Unlike free or uncontrolled attention, controlled attention often requires effort on the part of the individual to maintain it. Oscillation. Attention tends to change or oscillate continuously, either because we have to process two or more sources of information, or because we have to carry out multiple tasks and direct attention alternately from one to another. Garcia Sevilla, 1997. Attention in dogs does not orient itself in the same way as in humans, mainly due to differences in the levels of consciousness and rational thinking, as well as differences in interests and preferences which vary between dogs and humans. However, there are some general premises that are similar for dogs and humans, as mentioned earlier. There are interesting studies that show similarities between canine and human attention. For example, dogs tend to look first at the right side of a person's face and analyze it more than the left side, just as humans do. Humans tend to look first at the right half of a person's face when they meet them for the first time, and spend more time looking at that side. This phenomenon only occurs when observing human faces, not when looking at other objects or animals. One hypothesis suggests that the right side of the face better expresses the person's emotional state, which is why it is looked at first. A team of scientists from the University of Lincoln in England has discovered that domesticated dogs have also developed this behavior, possibly to understand human facial expressions. The researchers, led by Kun Gua, studied the eye and head movements of 17 dogs that were shown images of human faces, monkey faces, dog faces, and inanimate objects. The animals looked to the left, meaning the right half of the face, only when human faces were shown, and this tendency was even more pronounced when the facial expression was angry. According to the scientists, dogs may have learned this behavior to interpret human emotions after thousands of years of interaction with humans. However, when dogs were shown an inverted image, they still looked to their left, something that humans do not do. The research team explains that the dog's right hemisphere, which processes information from the left visual field, is better suited to interpreting human emotions than the left hemisphere. According to Adam Miklosi, a canine expert at Eötvös Loránd University in Budapest, Hungary, although the discovery is interesting, how dogs perceive human faces and whether they can recognize emotions is still a mystery. In the next installment, we will discuss memory, learning, intelligence, emotions, among other topics. Thank you for watching our video. If you can, give us a like, and leaving a comment would be great, as we all learn from each other. Again, many thanks for being here. And if you can subscribe, I would appreciate it, since we have created it with much love, the same love we have for our dogs.